everybody. Welcome to Moms in the Middle.
Yeah. Hey, Heidi. Welcome to the 30s Club.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Me and my sister-in-law were talking this weekend because she turned 30 like 2 months ago, and we were like, oh my gosh, it did not hit as hard as we thought it would,
No.
like turning 30. But I think that's just because like when you're married and you have kids and everything, it's like you already feel like you're kind of like almost there. It doesn't feel as huge like existential crisis, right? Of like I'm
Right.
30 and I'm not like I feel like I'm like I don't know. I'm not where I expected to be at 30. Like, when you're young, you're like think 30 is so much older than it is. Like
For sure.
that you're gonna be like rich going on vacation to Cancun like every summer or something at 30, like that's not reality. But I do feel like I feel like my 20s were good to me, and I'm like I'm good with my 30s. I'm like
I
I'm
feel
happy
like
about
once
it.
you turn 30, or like when you're in your 20s, 30 feels like, okay, I'm an adult now versus like 18.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
an adult now.
totally.
I'm in my 30s.
Yes, it feels like there's like you're the adultier adult of like there's no going back of like people looking at you like as an adult. And it's just so funny. I guess my mom had me around when she was 30, but like when I think of my parents in their 30s, I think of them being like so old, like when you're a kid, you're like they're so grown up and old, and like I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's like us now." Like, young people look at us like we're like real adults.
Yeah.
I also opened a Roth IRA this weekend too, so I was like, I'm just a real grown up.
Yeah, big thing. Look at you,
Yeah.
adulting. That's awesome.
I know. I was like,
awesome.
I've been self-employed like my whole life. So I was like, Joe has a decent, like we put a lot of money into his 401k in retirement, but I was like, I feel like 30, it's time that even though I'm self-employed and everything, like I need to start being responsible and saving for my retirement.
Yeah. We've had like through our jobs, my husband and I, we've had different retirement accounts and whatever. And so when we've changed jobs, it's like, oh my gosh, like what do we do with those now? And I have this friend who works in like personal finance, and she is amazing at like telling us what we should do with our money to like help it continue to grow without really having to put much into it. And so that's been nice. Like it's kind of like that security. Like we don't see it. It's there. It's growing. But retirement is just there's so much to learn.
It's so stressful.
Like,
and like, my dad is in finance, like in small, he's an accountant and does small business, like financial planning. Anyway, so he's been telling me for forever, like, and I mean, I took many finance classes, like I know some of this stuff, but he's been telling me forever, like, you need to just start like really small, putting away some money for retirement. Like time is the biggest thing on your side. And in my head, I'm like, oh, like I still have so much student loans. I still have a little bit of credit card debt I got into in my younger 20s. I still want to like work on getting out of, put more money towards. I still have, a car loan, like all these things that I'm like, I feel like it's just better to just like put money off my debt. And then as I like, have gotten like older, I'm like, really? It's like time is on your side with retirement. Of like, if you start saving at 30 versus 35, it's like exponentially more money. Even just having a few extra years. So I was, of course, like then I started listening to the Financial Feminist and listening to her investing advice. And I'm like, oh yeah, Dad, like I should have a retire. He's like, yeah, I've been telling you this for years. I'm like, but Tori told me, so I'm going to listen now. But I did have... but I'm like, when the Financial Feminist told me, then I'll do it. But I also like just business wise too this would probably be like we got some requests when I was chatting about this stuff when we were talking New Year's resolution stuff to talk about the business side of dual work, and we should talk more about that. But I have an investment account like in my business, but that like more like stocks and stuff that I like personally invest in stuff, but it's like business money. So anyways, I've been doing a little bit here or there, but I'm like, it's time for me to like, now that actually like I'm getting out of just like, how when you first start a business, like you don't make any money like the first couple years. So it's like I'm getting out of that phase where I'm like not making any money. So I'm like, I need to like build some good like financial patterns in my business and my life and actually start treating myself like an employee and not just like giving everything up for like my business. You know what I mean? Like I need to treat myself better as like an employee. So
you sound like such a mature 30-year-old.
I'm such a big girl.
Adult now.
Yeah.
What did you do to celebrate? It's a big one. So what'd you do?
We had so much fun. Oh my gosh, really, with Brinley? Oh no.
We had like a redo for my 31st.
Oh, good. Okay, because I was gonna say that's not very fun. Yeah, it was really fun. It is funny though. So like all of my friends, like literally every girl in my friend group, except for like one or two, has a baby under 4 months old or is pregnant. Like every single one. So they were not as like, yeah. So I'm not pregnant. I don't have a baby, but I had kids like a little bit earlier than most of my friends in my friend group. So it was just, you know, they're kind of in that stage of life right now. A lot of them are having their first or their second baby. So, which I'm happy for them. But yeah, so we went out. Everybody came over for pizza. We went out on Friday night. I had like a girls' night with some of my friends. And then we went out to this really cute, oh my gosh, I want to go back so bad for a date night. It was called PS, and it's like a speakeasy style bar downtown, but it's like inside Hotel Phillips, and they don't have any signs or anything, and you have to like know where the door, like you have to find the door. And then it's like an old basement mail room of like back when they had like mail rooms in the hotel. It's really cute. And so we went there, and it was just like very cozy vibes. Like it's very nice, very cozy, like couches and everything. It was put together really nicely, and there was so many people there on what I assumed were first dates. Like it's a great date spot. It was like a lot of like little tiny like cozy booths. So you can, and it's like dark and stuff. So you can kind of like snuggle in the booths and kind of be like, it's very intimate. But we were on like a little couch area, and it was really fun. We had a really good time. They like brought us out free champagne and everything.
Awesome.
But yeah, we had lots of fun, but we were like mainly just chatting baby stuff the whole entire time. Cause I was like, it was funny. So I have like, you know, a few, you know, like as an adult, you kind of accumulate little friend groups from like different areas of life. So I had like literally it was like one friend from every one of my like four groups of friends could make it to my birthday party. So none of them knew each other, but they like it was actually almost better that way, that it wasn't like, you know, three friends that all knew each other than like two who didn't or something. But it was really funny. So like they all didn't know each other, but except for me and my sister-in-law, they all had babies under 4 months old that were baby girls. So I was like, we have so much to actually talk about. So we really just talked baby stuff the whole entire time, but we had lots of fun.
That's good. I do feel like when you are a mom and you're in the thick of parenting, like when you do get together, you do end up talking about your kids.
I know, but sometimes it's nice too to just like have a few drinks, hang out, like chat about your kids and everything. So we talked a lot about that and pregnancy and just all. Yes, yeah, we had a really good time. And then I really wanted to go dancing, like so bad. And so me, my sister-in-law, and my brother went out to Power and Light because, of course, all my friends with 4 months old, with 2-month-old and 4 months olds were like 11 p.m. like it's the end of my night, and so just fine. And so we went to Power and Light, and apparently Power and Light doesn't get busy until midnight. I'm like, we got to 11:30, and I thought it was gonna be like packed, and it's like there was like 8 people on the dance floor, maybe like just starting to like people starting to come in. So we had like one drink, and then I was like, okay, I am not like, we started to see some more people coming in, but I was like, there's no way I'm staying until like the place gets busy, then people get drinks, then people start dancing. Like that's gonna be like 1 a.m. and I do not have that in me. And I was like, who starts partying at like midnight, 1 a.m.? And then when I got home, my husband was like, that was normal for us back in our early 20s of like you start getting ready to go out at like 10 p.m. I'm like, that seems insane. Why?
I never did that. Like I mean, obviously worked through college. Like Cody and I are high
Yeah.
school, you know, we're high school
Yeah.
sweethearts. So
I
he's
was never
already
a big
like,
partier either.
yeah, he was
Uh-huh.
already like, you know, because he's
And
older
he's a
than I
little
am.
older than you too. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was already like in a job and working every day, and I was going to school and I was working, and like we just didn't have that like party phase in our younger days.
Yeah.
And then once we got married and I was in nursing school, I graduated nursing school, that's when we started partying more. And honestly, because
Yeah.
we were struggling through our infertility battle, like we had periods of time where we were just like, screw it. Screw being careful, screw not drinking alcohol, like all these things, because it wasn't working. We were just getting so frustrated. So we had more party days, but even then we were like, you know, at dinner by 6, 7 o'clock, like ready to go at like 8, 9.
I
Just
know. I
never had
know.
that.
It's
We went
insane.
to Power and Light. We went to Power and Light back in March. We had not been in a long time. And it was the same thing. Like, and it was even
like no
it was
one
like
was there until early.
Yeah.
Like there was all Gen Zers there. Like we were like the only millennials, and like they just are so cute with like their little outfits and everything, but they were all just like Snapchatting their dancing, like the whole, like every time they would like dance, they'd be like dancing and like Snapchatting. And so then me and V were like, my sister-in-law were like pretending to Snapchat and like dance, and then we kept putting our hands up and we're like, oh no, we heard on TikTok that that's how they find millennials, is that millennials put our hands up when we dance.
Oh my gosh. Oh my god.
Apparently they don't put their hands up with their hands, so we were just like joking around and having fun, but it was really funny. But we had a good time, but we didn't stay long. I was like, yeah, I'm ready to go home. But it was a really, really fun night. So that's what I did Friday. And then I had like 3 drinks the whole night, but I like never drink anymore. And so I pretty much don't drink at all, except for like occasionally, like on a night out or something, I'll have a drink. And so I was like a little hungover the next day. I was like, I mean, I was fine, but I was just like, you know, not feeling it the whole day. But yeah, I never really had a partying phase either. I was like a really goody two shoes when I was younger, and like felt like in high school I was. And then like in college, like my husband is definitely way more of like the partier, the fun one, like high school and college and everything.
Same.
So like he would go out with his friends, and I was just like, that's so stupid. It's so immature to like go out and drink and party. Like I was thought I was like so like holier than thou. And then now that I'm older, I'm like, gosh, I really wish I went out and partied more when I was younger.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, I kind of miss out because now like I don't really want to. I'm too tired. I think it's like, you know, I feel old like when I go out to like, you know, something like that. Like I feel like, you know, kind of out of place. But it was just funny. Now I'm like, gosh, I really wish. I think just because like you guys, like I was in a monogamous long-term relationship so young in life, I felt like I had to act like I was like an older, like how married people act. Do you know what I mean? Where I was like, or like how people in long-term relationships or who are married like act. Where I was like, we could have still went out and had fun. Just because we're not like going home with some random person doesn't mean we can't like still go out and party together and have fun and like everything like that. So anyways, but you know, there's always regrets in life.
You have like more money too to like spend on
alcohol. Yeah, to like actually go out to like the nicer places and have fun and all that stuff. Oh, totally. Yeah. But I definitely did my 1 year in college, like my first year of college when I wasn't with Joe and I was back in Pennsylvania. I definitely went to my fair share of like frat parties and stuff, but I just was never one to like, I have too much anxiety. Like I'm not drinking jungle juice and like getting drunk in front of a bunch of frat boys. Like I'm sorry, I'm not. And so like I never was one to really like let go.
It's a control thing for me. Like I don't like drinking to the point where I feel like out of control of like what I'm saying, what I'm doing. Like I don't like that, and I never have. So I think it's more like that for me. And it's like that as an adult too. Like if I do drink, I mean, it's only a few drinks. I'm very, very like I'm a sipper, and
Like
I
a
don't
slow
have to
drinker
drink.
while eating, while drinking, like not
Yeah.
just like chugging, doing shots,
Yeah.
anything like that.
I
No,
don't have to drink to like dance.
me either.
I love
And so
Mhm.
it's kind of funny. I don't know if I told you this story, but we sang karaoke at Joe's company party. And I made Joe sing karaoke with me. And I was like, is there like a line? Like, do we have to sign up? They're like, no, you just have to be drunk. And I was like, unfortunately, I don't have to be drunk to sing karaoke in front of 200 people. Like, I don't care.
I can't say I actually have never sang karaoke. I'm fine dancing.
I'm a horrible singer, but I will
me
do
too.
it.
And my husband,
I'm like
he has to be drunk in order to like dance.
yes.
At least have had a few drinks in order to like dance or like get in front of people and do stuff.
Yes. Now that's so Joe was like, yeah, no, I have to be drunk, and he took a shot at the bar before we went up. But he like grew up so Southern Baptist that like they weren't allowed to dance. So and they weren't allowed to like listen to music that wasn't like instrumental music, like piano music, like any like rock music. I mean, of course he like didn't listen to that rule a lot, but like generally he wasn't allowed to like listen to music that you could dance and stuff. So like the first couple years of his like adult life, just the most awkward person on a dance floor. Like, I mean, he wanted to be a good dancer. Aww. He gave it his all, but just like very awkward. But he's recovered. Like now, you know, it's been like 12 years he's been out of his house. Yeah. He is recovered, and now he can like have a lot of fun without drinking or anything. But definitely like in his earlier years, I think alcohol like helped him loosen up a lot, because he was like didn't have that like muscle, had not been strengthened throughout his life of like loosening up and having fun and stuff. So, but no, my parents, like my family, were the type of people where we would literally sometimes like put on music after like dinner, and like my dad would be on the table dancing. Like we were like very fun. They were pretty fun. Yeah, with no alcohol needed, but yeah. So I had a fun Friday night. You know, like I said, I'm in the phase now where like my kids are sleeping better. I'm coming out of my shell more. That I'm coming out of that like phase of parenting. That I'm like, I want to go out. Like I want to stay out late till 11. You know, and stuff and everything. And then like, but then my friends aren't. But it's okay. Like I still love them. They're still my friends. But it's just different phases of life a little bit. But yeah, so we did that Friday, and then Saturday we didn't really do anything. We had like one of our good friends, their daughter's birthday's this weekend too. So it was her first birthday. So we went to her birthday party. And then Sunday was so much fun. So Joe, like I slept in, and then Joe went around and got me like multiple different fast food breakfast items from different places that I like, and like a hot coffee to wake up to with the kids. So like I slept in, and then I woke up to like breakfast, like fast food breakfast and coffee and everything, but it was really sweet. And then I opened my present. Oh yeah, go ahead.
What is sleeping in for you? What time?
So like, I mean, so he is like, oh, you can sleep in as long as you want. And like 8:30, I'm just like wide awake. Like I can't sleep any longer. But the nice thing about it though was that like, what I really miss about sleeping in is not sleeping in, but laying in your bed until you want to get up. Like not your kids, like, because you wake up and then your kids are on you in bed being like, get up right now and perform, like make me breakfast, get me dressed for school, like, you know. And so I was like, so I just like laid in my bed till like 9:30, like scrolling TikTok, like not doing anything. And then they came in, and then I heard them come in the house. I was like, oh, you guys can come in, like whatever. And then we ate breakfast, and I opened my presents, and it was really sweet. I mean, I got like a few different presents, but then Joe, very sweetly, he got me a present, but then he also he'd been like putting aside cash the last couple of months that he had gotten, so I could go shopping without it like coming out of our budget. So he's been like putting aside cash. He's just like, yeah, it was so sweet. So it was so thoughtful, because he knows I like to shop, but he's like, I didn't want, even if I told you like, oh, go spend $100 on yourself, it's like hard to see it come out of the bank account, or like, you know, because it's like you budget for it and everything. And so it's just like free money. Anyways, it was just fun to just go shopping by myself. I like got a smoothie and went shopping. And so yeah, we just kind of chilled. My brother came over and my sister-in-law for a little bit before they left town. And then we went out to this new ramen place that was so good. Casey Craft Ramen, shout out, in Overland Park. And it was so good. And it's been like, it's brand new and it's been like packed. Like our friends said they tried to go and it was like a line like wrapping around this like the restaurant to get in. And so I was like, this is actually the perfect day to go because it was the Kansas City Chiefs game. Shout out Chiefs, go Chiefs.
Yeah, go
hopefully,
Chiefs.
Yeah, hopefully they don't lose the next game and get out of the playoffs by the time this airs. But that game was awesome last night. It was so good. I literally was like crying for the kicker of the Bills. Like I felt so bad. I'm like, I want the Chiefs to win, but I feel so bad for him missing that field goal. Oh my God. Like I know, but how about them Chiefs? They were so good. So yeah, so it was really chill there because like I think so we got a table, whatever. Because I mean it was still busy, but it wasn't like that level busy because I think most people were at sports bars or at home to watch the Chiefs game. But it was really, really yummy. It was so good. And then we stopped and got ice cream on the way home and watched the game. And it was just a really fun birthday. Yeah, it was just like really chill, but but just really fun. So cool. Yeah.
So cool. And you had a TikTok go viral. So let's
yes, I did. Yes, I did. When I first started seeing it go viral, I kind of, like, I don't know. You don't really post on TikTok as much, but like when a TikTok in history, when the TikTok goes viral, it's like usually you're just like, okay, buckle up because like it gets mean comments and nasty comments and people fighting and then some positive like whatever. So like I haven't had TikTok go viral in a while. And so when it started to get picked up, I was like, oh no, like it's going to be my whole weekend is like monitoring this comment section. Yeah. And sometimes I just don't look. Like sometimes I just, kind of get like the gist and then just kind of like don't really look. But honestly, the comments were overwhelmingly positive. Like I would say like 1% of the comments were like, I don't know, or like, argumentative a little bit, but like overwhelmingly positive. So I was like, this, because I thought it was going to be a controversial opinion. So I was like, we should talk about this on the podcast because I think it's obviously something people want to talk about or like relate to. Yeah. So I'll have to post. I haven't posted on Instagram yet because I do think it'll be more controversial on Instagram than it is on TikTok.
It's so funny. It definitely depends on the platform.
It does, yeah. And so maybe I'll post it leading up to this this podcast airing or when it airs or something because people are gonna be like, what are you talking about? But I just definitely feel like so it's about kind of gentle parenting and stuff, and or I guess a lot of people in the comments were like, it's permissive parenting, it's not gentle parenting. So I guess. So I guess it's
video you stitched was
the video I stitched. Yeah. So I'll talk about what the TikTok is for those who haven't seen it, but I'll try to get it on my social so you can watch the actual video if you want to. So pretty much there was this girl on a podcast who she does not have kids. She's an aunt, and she was at her sister's house, and she's a Mormon, and she has like lots of kids or whatever. And her sister all day was like, I can't wait to watch this TV show with you. I've been waiting to, I want to show you this TV show. Like when the kids go down for nap, we're going to watch it, whatever. And so they've been like waiting all day to watch the TV show together. The sister who has the kids is really excited. And then she puts her kids down for nap. And then I guess her 3-year-old pops up from her nap like 5 minutes later and comes into her room and is like, I'm not taking a nap. I want to watch Moana. And so then the mom puts on Moana for her and then just starts like silently crying and says to her sister, like, I never have a moment to myself. Like I never have any time to myself, anything. And the sister who doesn't have kids was like, this is the saddest thing about parenting, about motherhood, like, and whatever. And pretty much like, I never want to have kids. Like, this is like, it's so hard, whatever. So I stitched it and was just talking about like how important boundaries are with kids. And like, you can say no, and like, you're the parent. And for like some reason, I feel like the gentle parenting world has turned into a lot of permissive parenting of like just letting the kids kind of like in this because like gentle parenting is all about respecting your kids, right? So like it's about like respecting your kids as people, valuing who they are as people, and respecting that. But I think there's been this like misconception, and especially in the people who like don't want to do the hard work or maybe have trauma that like it's hard for them to put in boundaries with their kids, of just like in respecting their kids, letting them have like a free for all over like the house and their time and their life and everything, and turning motherhood into like martyrdom, right? Of like, you're a martyr as a mother. Like that's your role, is just to martyr yourself to your family. And so that's what my video was about, of like, it's okay to say no. It's okay to have boundaries. Like, we have a quiet time in my house where my kids go down for an hour every single day. And if they don't want to sleep, like, they don't have to sleep, but they have to be in their rooms for an hour every single day. And like, I don't give up that time. Like, that's my time to watch TV or read a book or like do whatever I want to do. And like, of course, barring like they're sick or there's like an emergency or they need to go potty or like whatever, like that hour is like mom time. And like, same with bedtime. Like, we have a strict bedtime, and like after that is mom and dad's time to like have our time for the night and everything. And so I guess I was like, well, obviously people, like so many people were responding and being like, I see this all the time, of like parents not having boundaries at all with their kids, and kind of using it as like, this is gentle parenting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of like, gentle parenting is that. So I guess, let's just talk about it. You saw the TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, with gentle parenting, like you said, like respect has to go both ways. So yes, we're talking to our kids in a respectful manner and respecting their boundaries and their needs.
We're not yelling at them.
Yeah, and teaching them how to process their emotions and cope with, disappointment and, stuff like that. But like, it goes both ways. So we have to teach them how to do that for us too,
Absolutely. And I think that there's this misconception too, of like, that sense there has to be respect both ways, that there's not, like, we're still the adults. Like, we still have to parent. Our role is to teach our kids to like be grown adults, and like how the world functions and how they fit into the world. And I think that especially like with our generation, I think a lot of us feel like our like creativity or our sense of self was like quelled. You know what I mean? Like, people were like, you have to fit into this box kind of thing. And so like our sense of identity or something was quelled. And then in that, we're catering too much to our child's individual self, that then we're not teaching them how to like fit into a world that is not going to treat them like their mom and dad treats them, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you see this at all, because I know your kids go to daycare. I don't know if you see this at all. I feel like kids who have to go to childcare have a lot of structure in their day, right?
Yeah.
Versus like people who are like stay-at-home moms and stuff like that. But I personally, and like my sister is a doctor of criminology. She has multiple degrees in psychology and sociology and stuff like that. But she always says like, kids thrive so much inside of structure and boundaries.
Yeah.
Of like knowing what to expect.
Oh yeah. And I think that like, I see that, when we have long weekends where they're with us, I mean, because we're, our home life is not near as structured as daycare is. Like, they have very set, schedules and things when they go outside and when they eat lunch and when they lay down, and, like, we just don't have that strict of a structure at home. We still do those things, but, so when we have long weekends and stuff, I definitely see that. I'm like, okay, it's time for us to get back to like, and I need it too, like I need
in the routine
too. Yeah. So I definitely see that. But I do think that sometimes it can be challenging to navigate setting boundaries and
and that was the biggest like negative comment on my post, was just like, sometimes you just have to give in for your sanity. like you don't have the wherewithal that day to be like putting your screaming 3-year-old back to bed over and over and over again. I just also feel like, though, I think something that isn't like talked about enough is how it can be very difficult to set boundaries like with your toddler and deal, because I definitely feel like we went through that phase for like 2 years with my oldest, which again, like we are not experts in any of this, guys. Like we have our oldest is almost 5 and 5. Like we are brand new to like childhood parenting, that kind of stuff. And so this is just like what we're figuring out how to navigate it, and like all the, you know, all the information online, like all the information about how you should be parenting and what's the best way you're not going to screw up your child and everything. Like we're figuring that out in real time right now, like how to navigate that. And so like, but I definitely feel
like I'm flying by the seat of my pants.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, though, so like we had this phase, I feel like between like 2 to 4, where it was like really difficult. Like Alda was always pushing, you know what I mean? Like always pushing back against every boundary, every schedule, like everything that we'd set was like a pushback. And then I really feel like after 4, it was like that was difficult, but by setting like boundaries around like what were our expectations of her, like I feel like we've gone to a much easier phase now where like she knows how she's supposed to act, how she's supposed to treat other people around the house, and like what is expected of her. Like she can't put her feet up on the table. Like that's a huge thing. She used to always put her feet up on the table. And so like we had to set very strict, you know, boundaries around like this is the proper way to like eat with people, so she's not going to restaurants and putting her feet up on the table and stuff and everything. And so like, but like setting those strict boundaries like consistently, it's like it might be really difficult in those moments, but like sticking to like your guns really helps like long term then learn like the confines of like, and that's, you know, not, and I think so many people, like I feel like, so like my parents were very balanced, I feel like, of like they were not very like, we definitely had rules, we definitely had boundaries, we definitely got in trouble, like all that stuff, but like we never got in trouble for things that were just like us as individuals. Do you know what I mean? Like we never got in trouble for like us being ourselves. Does that make sense? Right. Of like just being like, oh no, I don't like that you like to talk that way or like to do that or whatever. And so like we're gonna discipline that, which I know like my husband had more of, and so he has a more difficult time setting boundaries because I think he just had so many rules that he felt like he couldn't like be himself at all. He was just like always worried about messing up and getting into trouble, so he has like a harder time. But I feel like my parents were like very balanced in their approach, that it's easier for me to be balanced because I also see where like it was good for me to have like boundaries and rules and stuff. But that was a huge thing that was talked about a lot in the comments, was like millennials generally had very authoritative parents, like generally as a population. And so they're like not, and they have trauma from that. So they're trying not to like replicate their trauma by doing like the complete opposite, which is then causing its own slew of problems of what we see in classrooms now, of like you see teachers all over social media being like, kids have never heard the word no. They don't know how to listen to authority. They don't know how to sit in like any sort of classroom structure. Like I can't manage 20 kids' different individual needs all day. Like they have to know how to have some structure like in the classroom and stuff like that, which I think is like a huge problem that
I have teacher friends and I have friends that substitute, and those that sub are like, I do it because I need the money, but it's awful. It's awful.
Yeah.
And it's not any one kid. It's just awful because of the environment.
The collective.
Like,
children and their behavior.
Yeah. I mean, I had one friend who was substituting, and she saw some students like throwing pencils at this kid, and she, you know, told them multiple times like, we're not going to do that. Stop throwing the pencils, you know. And they're like, oh no, we're not doing that. We didn't throw pencils. And she's like, I saw you. Like, we're not doing that. And you know, it got to the point where she had to have like the principal come in and talk to them, to the class. Because
But don't you feel like there's no like backbone? And again, like I'm not in the class, my kids aren't in kindergarten yet, whatever. But don't you feel like there's no backbone of there's like kids aren't afraid of anything? Like there's no like, okay, what's the principal gonna do? Tell my parents? Well, I'm not gonna get in trouble at home for it. Like, don't you feel like that's like, I mean, of course, it's not like the whole problem, but like if I would never ever act out in class because I was terrified of getting into trouble by anybody who is in authority, let alone that being brought back to my parents that I was acting disrespectfully towards people. I would have been like grounded for months if I was acting disrespectfully to a teacher like that.
100%. Yeah.
And so I just feel like there's no, like, they don't have, like, kids don't, I'm like, kids nowadays, they don't have, like, a sense of, like, of authority, of, like, people are in authority over them, which I think is back to that, like, there's a way we can respect children and their autonomy and their boundaries and things like that, while also being the parent and being, like, and being respected back as an authority figure. Like over them. And I just know, so like I guess so like we're in the younger years of all of this stuff. We're not in like the school age
I mean, I
teenagers,
feel like
whatever.
We're just getting to that point with our oldest kids that you know, one, they recognize and truly like really understand the boundaries and the relationship between parent and them and all of that, where they're really starting to understand that. But yeah, anyways, I just feel like we're just now getting to that point.
Yes. But we're trying to figure out, like, how do we parent our now kids? They're not toddlers anymore.
Right.
With making them respectful children and respectful in classrooms and respectful to authority. Like, I feel like I'm trying to figure that out of how do I make my child go to kindergarten next year and make sure she listens to the teacher and make sure she respects the authority over her and stuff like that, and isn't like being like one of these kids that I hear about on social media. And I think that like, so because we both kind of are more like attachment parent, gentle parenting style for sure, especially in the baby years. And I think this is where my like shift has come, because that is definitely, and I want to talk about this in another TikTok because I got asked this about like breastfeeding, of like how do you set boundaries with breastfeeding, which I've talked about in other social media posts about the boundaries that I've set with my toddler as we progress into breastfeeding. But I think that there's this like, I do think that like attachment parenting, especially in the first 3 years of life, there's a lot of research to show how much kids need like that set solid parental figure in their first 3 years of life, when their brain is doing like the most development, to feel like secure. Like they need to feel really secure in their parental relationship so that they can like flourish and learn independence out here, because they have this here that they know they can always come back to. And so like I tend to lean towards that attachment parenting style in toddlerhood. And then with my oldest, like once we were reaching that age more where she's coming out of like, she was not nursing anymore, she's coming out of like being attached all the time, she's doing like preschool and gymnastics and like doing more things outside the home, we had this really difficult shift where I was like trying to follow a lot of the like gentle parenting and attachment parenting advice, but it was not working for us like at all. Like it was plummeting our relationship. It was making her insecure. It was making her just like a terror, honestly. And so like a lot of the people who I followed before that, like Big Little Feelings and like other gentle parenting accounts, of course I use some of their stuff, like we use timers and stuff, but things like their methods around like, okay, like this is how you leave a park and like this is how you do, like we use a timer to leave the park and stuff like that. But like when they were like, oh, we say bye-bye to the park and then like we do this and we do that, I'm like, this is not working for me. It's just ending in a meltdown every single time. Like this talking and explaining and in real time helping them work through their feelings about leaving the park and like that kind of stuff was like not working at all, and just creating like all of us being miserable. Of like Alda would put fits because she knew that she could keep making fits and we could stay there talking through it.
And I feel I feel like you just that like they're getting to this point where they have their own they've got their own personality. They
Mm-hmm.
are able to hold an entire conversation with you. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
understand exactly what you're saying and your tone of
Yep.
voice and all of that. And yeah, like the all of those things, like say bye-bye to the park and we'll see it next. It just doesn't work.
When they're two, like when they're two,
Yeah,
maybe, or like
they get
little toddlers, like, okay, bye bye, or whatever. And also, like, we got to a point where it's like, you can't physically pick them up anymore and just walk them away, like where they're fighting you and stuff. And it was like a safety thing. If I'm like, what if Alda starts riding to the street? I'm not going to be like, Alda, wait, let's talk through why this isn't a safe situation. Like, I needed her to respect my authority enough to listen to me. This is what I said, and you are listening this very, very moment to me.
I will say,
And
when safety is a concern, I kind of do throw gentle parenting out the window. In a
yes.
sense of like, it is urgent that you listen to me right now. And there's usually a little bit of a battle there. And then we circle back. So that's where it kind of like, it's kind of in the middle because we circle back. I don't leave it at that. But I
like
circle
later
back.
when we're in a safe situation, let's talk about why that was not safe and you
Talk
needed to listen
about
to
it.
mommy. Yeah.
And I feel like
And so
that does help. So that when that happens the
uh-huh.
next time, because they're still they're still young enough that they don't recognize. They're not thinking ahead. They're not recognizing the danger. Like we do that in playing in the house. Like there's things I'm like, we need to think about why we're swinging that around. I'm not just going to sit here and be like, please don't swing that around. I've told you don't swing that around. We're not going to swing that around. Like,
hey, you might hurt your sister if you're swinging that around. Like, that's why I don't want you to do that. It's like, no, like, stop right now.
We are
Put that down.
before someone gets hurt because it's a safety issue. So I feel like that's kind of where I like draw that line is when safety is a concern.
That more authoritative voice comes out of like, no, this is not. So we personally, so we tried like the time ins, which I know like Big Little Feelings is huge about of like, and I think that this is so individualized for kids' personalities because we were trying time ins with Alta of like, she would get, warnings. And then if she didn't listen, she'd get a time. And we're like, we'd sit with her in her room, we'd let her calm down, and then we'd like talk about her or whatever. Personally, for her, it was riling her up so much more. Of like she needed like alone time to like come down from the like big emotion that she was having when we were there. It would just like ricochet over and over and over again. And so
someone you're mad at being in your face. Like you're already mad at them. You don't want to see their face.
Yeah. Like, because I do that with, like, Joe. Like, if we're fighting, I'm like, I need to go in my room. Like, if we're getting to a point where it's just, like, unhealthy amounts of just, like, fighting, like, we're just arguing because we're just mad. It's like, I need to go. We need some time apart to think through what we're actually feeling, let our emotions settle down, and then, like, come back and talk about it later. And so
for me right now.
100%. And so we ended up implementing this book. We switched around the age of like 3.5 when just I felt like everything I was like reading online for toddler and preschool age just like was not working for us at all. We switched to 1, 2, 3 Magic, which is a book. Have you heard of this book?
No.
Okay. I didn't know if I've mentioned it before. So it's pretty much like you count 1, 2, 3, and then at 3 they get a consequence. And so you do 0 emotion. Like that's 1. And then you wait for their behavior to change. And then if it doesn't change, that's 2. And then if it doesn't change again, like those are the 2 warnings. And then 3 means consequence. So like we usually do timeout. If we're out somewhere, it means when she gets home, she gets timeout. Or sometimes it's like she loses a show time or she loses time on her, on doing something she likes to do, like something like that. Yeah. So it's a consequence, like a clearly defined consequence. So usually we say like, we would like you not to do that. If you keep doing that, this is going to be the consequence. If she does it, that's 1. If she does it, that's 2. If she doesn't, that's 3. Honestly, it has been magic for us, which is the point of 1, 2, 3 Magic of like when she first learned like the boundary of like of like we enforced it enough times over the first like month or two that she learned that we meant it at 3, because at first it was like at 2, like just give me a little bit longer, just let me think, whatever. When she learned that like there was not going to be the arguing back and forth, it was just going to be at 3 and then that's it. It has worked so much better that now if we're like, that's 1, she's like, okay, I'll do it, you know, whatever. Okay, I'll stop, like that kind of stuff. But we try not to use it on things that like should be a discussion. Do you know what I mean? Like those behaviors that's like, we need to discuss like why this is not okay. Like we try to use it on those things that's like, we need you to go wash your hands. And then she's just like, I don't want to wash my hands. I don't want. And then we're just like, okay, that's 1. Like we're not going to argue. We're not going to negotiate with a dictator because I always, or a terrorist. We're not going to negotiate with the terrorist. That's what I always say to Joe. Like if you want to throw a fit, like that's up to you, but like you're going to have the consequence at 3. But another interesting thing about it is that you don't talk about it after 3, like after their timeout. That's the theory behind 1, 2, 3 magic, which is why we don't use it for the behaviors that like we want to use that as a learning tool. Yes, that it's like 3 is the consequence, and after the consequence it's over. So like after the consequence, they come out of their room and you're just right back into like, they have to do the thing after they come out of their room, but it's like right back to normal life. And honestly, it has been so freeing in our household. And I also think so amazing for Alda. Like she spends so much less time unhappy, like so much less time throwing fits, unhappy, because she truly goes into her room, has her consequence, works her way down from her big emotions, and then she comes out like nothing has ever happened and just like right back into happy and play. And it's been so great for us. And it really was something that we implemented when it became like that safety issue of like, she's not little anymore. She's like doing more things out with people. We needed like some kind of like disciplinary method that like my mom could do, you know, and stuff. And something interesting about it too is that they say like, if the child isn't going into their room, like you don't physically like pick them up and throw them into their room, like throwing a tantrum. You give them a timeout like in their space. So like if they're throwing a tantrum in the living room and you said 3, like you leave the environment and like just let them have their, you know, however many minutes like in there, like in their own space during the tantrum. And that, I mean, honestly, we don't have to do that anymore at all because Alda just stops like her behavior usually after 2. But that was so good for us because my mom like physically couldn't pick up Alda and like make her go into her room. But also it just was like kids like at that age, I felt like she was just throwing tantrums to get our attention. And so it was giving her more attention of like picking her up and putting her into her room and picking her up and putting her into her room and picking her up and putting her into her room, which is like more and more attention on her, where we're just like, okay, you're going to throw your fit. Like, we're not going to be a part of this. Like, you need to like have your own time. And honestly, I'm like, I feel like in the way that like gentle parenting is on social media, if I shared that, people would be like, you're so cruel for like, I've literally heard like people on Big Little Feelings be like, you are abandoning your child if you like leave them to cry alone in their room. Like that is like trauma. And I just can't get on board with that. I think that there has to be a middle ground between letting your child just run wild with their emotions all the time and not teaching them boundaries and expectations around how they're going to act around people and their emotions around like how being like, that's not okay to have that emotional response, such a little thing. And then on the other side, like hitting your kids and spanking them, that's like, and like getting mad at them for every little tiny thing and screaming at them. Like there has to be a balanced middle ground between these two extremes where we have children respecting adults.
Right. So I also tried, like, you know, when Brax was like between 2 and 3, like started trying the time ins together. And sometimes I felt like it worked. And other times I felt like you said, like it just made it worse. And so I kind of started getting to the point where I would ask him, like, do you want me to be in here or do you want time on your own? And I mean, a lot of times he'd be like, no, I want to be by myself. I'm like, okay, I'm going to walk out and I am still here if you need me. And so now I feel like it is like more that where I know that he more often than not needs to be alone and has the time. And honestly, because we worked on that early on, there's a lot of times where he will even tell me that before,
Of like,
like,
I need to be alone.
I need to be alone. Yeah. Or I need to
Mm-hmm.
just be by myself. And I mean, it's just like so much, it's so helpful. But
Yeah.
yeah, and so I just, again, I think there needs to be that middle ground between like abandonment and,
Yeah.
just whatever. And so I just always make sure that he knows that I'm here. Like, even if I'm not in there with him, like, I'm still here. If you want to talk, I'm here, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
let you be by yourself to like figure this
Yeah.
out and calm yourself down.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to be like authoritative, like where you have to sit in that one spot and you cannot touch any toy or anything
Yeah.
like that. Like, I want him to do whatever
Yeah.
he needs to do to calm down. So it's like, if he
Yeah.
wants to be in his room and play for a little bit on his own, if he needs to work with some like sensory stuff, like, I don't care. But
Yeah,
like,
that's how we are too. Yeah.
And then circling back around, like, do you understand why you're in timeout or why you
Mm-hmm.
needed space? Like, do you understand? Like, you're not going to talk to me that way. I'm not going to allow you to talk to me that way, and this is what we can do better
Yeah.
next time. Like, those are big,
Don't you
huge
think?
conversations that I feel like, and I, again, do not have this figured out. It doesn't work every
Oh,
time.
yeah.
But I have noticed that through those things, like naming feelings and going back and talking about it, like, it does make a difference later on down the road, because there's been
Mm-hmm.
times where he's like, I started using this phrase. I say, you can be mad, but you can't be mean. So like,
Oh, that's
you
good.
can be mad, but you do not get to throw punches. You do not get to
You get to
throw
be mean to
toys.
other people.
You
Yeah,
can't
because
be
you're mad.
mean to
Yeah.
anybody. Like, you can be mad all you want, but you are not going to be mean. And I started using that, and it has worked even with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
At she's not even 2,
Yeah.
and she totally gets it. Like, she totally gets it. She will stop
Mm-hmm.
right then. And she might still like throw a fit, but she will not like hit or kick or anything like
Yeah.
that. And so I've really liked that phrase. I just think it's made a big difference. But there's been times even where my oldest, he's said like, I want to hit you right now, but I'm not, like,
Mm-hmm.
he's not, but he's
I know
just
I'm not,
saying
so
that,
but
like,
I can't. Yeah.
I'm feeling like I want to hit you. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. But
okay, but we're not
that
going
goes
to
back
do
to
that.
like boundaries. And like
Mm-hmm.
I feel so strongly that especially when it comes to us as moms, like our bodies and our bodily autonomy, that it is like, and with things like that, like teaching them appropriate bodily responses to like their anger. Isn't that so important to teach kids at such a young age? Because we talk so much as adults about like setting boundaries with our friends, setting boundaries with our parents, and like things like that. But like, what about setting boundaries with our kids? Because if we're gonna raise kids who like, especially sons who like respect women and hold their boundaries and respect their boundaries and everything like that, like how important is that? That like we as their mothers are letting them know that like we are allowed to have boundaries. And I do that sometimes with my kids of like, if I don't want to be right, like I'm feeling touched out and they're on me and they're snuggling and everything, like especially like I said, like early babyhood, like obviously you can't just be like, sorry baby, like I don't want to nurse you right now or something. Like that's completely different. But like in toddlerhood and preschool years, being like, I say with my son, like, no, mommy doesn't feel like nursing right now. Like, or mommy doesn't want to, like, mommy needs a little bit of time to herself. Like, you can snuggle your teddy bear, or something like that. Like, I feel like that's so important. If we're talking all about this stuff as with adults and our husbands need to respect our boundaries and like all that stuff as like adults and trying to like retroactively put all these like boundaries and respect and bodily autonomy in place, and then we're letting like in this situation that I stitched just like our kids walking all over like our boundaries and our bodily autonomy, you know what I mean? Like of not like, and like isn't that so important to not to teach our daughters to stand up for themselves and like what they want, and then also like and also our sons too.
Yeah, it is so important. And
yeah,
I mean, I definitely have, my threshold is different from day to day. Sometimes I have more patience and understanding, and other days I'm like, I just don't have it. Like, I can't. I don't have the capacity for this. And I think that's just part of parenthood. Some days
no, I totally get it.
Some days you feel
But
like you're rocking it, and other days you're just like
yeah.
surviving.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I agree. I agree.
But I
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely
I
don't
do.
think that, like, I hate that people don't want, like, people are like afraid to have kids because of the negativity that's out there.
Yes,
You know?
of the idea that like I said
You have to
earlier,
do
like
everything.
motherhood is martyrdom. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have to give up everything for your children. I don't like that. I also like again, like I think you give up a lot to have kids. Like I think it's a huge
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. Like I'm
Yeah.
not saying that it isn't, but I think that there are a lot of mothers who there's also this narrative of like, well, you chose this. So like
Mm-hmm.
you now are responsible to give everything to your kids because you chose to have kids. Like you're responsible for giving up everything for like your kids' happiness or your kids' freedom or joy or whatever. And I just don't agree with that. I think that like if you don't have balance like in your life as like a mother, and there's certainly some years that I don't have balance, like because of my kids' needs and stuff like that. But I think generally, like as a mother, if you don't have any balance in your life, like you aren't going to be a good balanced mother who can hold boundaries and teach values to your kids and like have a marriage that like works and like all that stuff if you and have friendships and like be a person, because like the truth is like one day your kids are gonna leave the house and like you still need to be a person. You can't just be like a complete like shell of yourself either, like because you chose motherhood and stuff. Like I don't like that narrative. And I definitely feel like I've gotten better at that. Like I feel
I
like
was
with
just
Alda
gonna
when she
say
was
that.
little, I was a martyr for like her happiness. And I feel like as time goes on, you realize like how unsustainable that is and how it's not even healthy for your kids. It's not healthy for them to
For
never
both
learn.
people.
Yeah, it's not healthy for them to learn that like they're never, oh, mom's always there. She'll always put me to bed. She'll always nurse me when I want to. Like it's healthy for them. Like emotions are not evil. Like them having negative emotions is not bad. It's like you helping, like that's a teaching opportunity for you to teach them how to like navigate those negative emotions and work through them, because life is full of negative emotions.
Yeah, I was like, our job as parents is not to shield them from all the bad things. Like bad things are going to happen in their life. Like hard things are going to happen that they're going to have to be able to navigate. Like our job is to help them navigate those things in a respectful way, that is helpful to them.
That's really the balance, right? Between like what is our like defining what is our role as parents. Is it to make our kids' life happy and joyful, or is it to prepare them to be like adult and productive members of society and like to find their place in this world and what brings them joy and happiness and like stuff? Like is that like our job, or is our job to like make their life easier, to make their life happy, to be the joy givers? Like, and I think, or to make their life easier, like what is our job? And I think that that's where a lot of people get hung up, of like they just want to see their kids happy, which is like, I like to see my kids happy. I like to be their person that they can fall back on and make their day easier and joy filled and stuff. But in reality, like they're not going to be in our house or forever. And our job is to make them prepared for like the real world and adulthood and stuff. I feel like now as my kids are getting older, I'm realizing that more of like it's doing them a disservice by like not teaching them how to act in a classroom, or not teaching them how to listen to a teacher and act when the world isn't revolved around them. Like that's doing them a disservice in the long run, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's a journey, like you said, my first years as a mom, like, but it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
No, definitely, for sure. And as they get older, it just gets more and more complicated, right? Like trying to always be that person and be there and not like have them learn their place and their independence.
I think too, as you become, as you travel through it, like you get more confident and you learn more, and you learn more about your kids, and your kids change, and there's no one's ever perfect, but
yeah, and that's for sure too. Like I definitely also believe in like the sense that what works for one kid like doesn't work for every kid. So like just because one, two, three
Yeah.
magic works really good for Alda. It doesn't mean that it's gonna like work for Desi or that it would work for your kids or like
Right.
anything like that. Like, but you do have to try to find like what that individual kid's personality and like needs are and how they can like be met there.
Yeah, and I think just not shutting them down. Like you have
Mm-hmm.
to learn about your kids. You have to learn why they're getting upset about something, why, finding that root cause and really working on that versus just being like you shouldn't be crying. Like
Yeah.
you shouldn't be
That's
upset
a
about
stupid
that.
reason to cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I mean, maybe it does feel that way to you, but like, to them it could be different. And because they are their
Mm-hmm.
own person with their own personality and their own thoughts, and that becomes more
Yeah,
apparent the older they get. So
for
I think that's
sure.
the biggest thing with, the difference in authoritative parenting and gentle parenting, like finding that middle
Mm-hmm.
ground. So you can
Yes.
do both. So
100%.
yeah.
100%. Totally. Well, good talk.
Yeah, it was a
We're
good talk.
figuring this out maybe in like 2 years from now when our kids are in kindergarten. We have way more like perspective on all of this and how
Right.
other kids act and how our kids act and all this stuff. We could talk about it again, but I do think it's just something that these last few months I've been just thinking a lot about. I don't know about you, but like we didn't talk at all about parenting before we had kids. Like we didn't
No.
talk about like we talked about like maybe baby. We didn't even talk about baby stuff that much, but we definitely didn't think to the point of like how are we going to parent our kids? Like I didn't think about that at all until I just
No.
got there and then was like, oh shit, like this kid doesn't
I
just have
mean,
to be fed and diapered anymore.
yeah, I think the only things like we talked about like what sports our kids will play and like how we'll handle the
Uh-huh.
extracurricular activities and stuff like that. But
Uh-huh.
like when it comes down to like the nitty gritty day to day of parenthood, like no, we didn't really talk about that, and that's a whole
No.
nother layer of like meshing because like me and my husband are not always on the same page and like meshing that. What is
Mm-hmm.
that going to look like for our family? You know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a whole
Totally.
other layer of it all.
Oh
And I think
yeah,
that's the
that's for
case for a lot
sure.
of people.
Yeah,
Everyone's
and
brought up a
especially
little bit differently, and
mm-hmm.
we have our own like vision or like idea of what parenting looks like based off of, our parents. And so
Oh yeah,
figuring
for
out,
sure.
yeah, it's
And I
just
think that's for sure true in our household too, of like just had very different upbringings and like how our parents parented. And so it's like really hard to mesh. And then also
yeah,
like I think especially for my husband wanting to parent very differently than his parents, it was like a big like, well, what does that even look like? Because I don't know, like, because
yeah,
he kind of grew up in a circle where everybody parented like his parents. So he was like,
yeah,
what does that even look like to parent differently? And so I feel like there's just like a lot of, yeah, a lot of just discussions and
yeah.
figuring out as we go, which is like it's horrible. Like your first child, it truly is like the experiment. Like, like we're gonna
It is.
try
It's
like what we
messy.
can.
It's
It is
messy
messy,
and it's
yeah.
hard, but it's also so rewarding. And when you do find
Mhm.
things that work for your kids that make your life
Mhm.
easier and make their life easier, then you're like, yeah, like that's rewarding. We're figuring it out,
Mhm.
And so,
For sure.
yeah, I mean, it's
I think social
definitely,
media makes that so hard though, which we've talked about before of like
yeah,
you feel like you're a bad parent all the time on social media because like all like we, like I said, like timeouts really work for us. And then I'll read this thing on social media that's like if you put your kid in timeout, you're abandoning them. And I'm like, I don't feel like that's true of like how it
yeah,
works for us is like a very positive experience for not only me but also for my daughter. Like it works really good for her. So but it's like so hard to like sometimes those things like that we see on social media invoke such like an emotional response when you read something like that you like really kind of take a step back and are like, oh my gosh, like am I a horrible parent? Like even
yeah,
someone who's generally a very confident person, like it's hard to navigate social media, especially when it comes to parenting, because there's so many emotions at stake because we
mhm,
all want to do what's like best for our kid.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and everyone's people are out there. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
like if you're really having such negative responses to something that you're seeing on social media, like just unfollow. Like don't follow
Mm-hmm.
those people, Find
Totally.
your people
Totally.
that, that you relate to, and you
Yeah.
know.
And I think sometimes you can think like, oh, since they have such a big following, they must be right, or this must work for everybody. So like
Yeah.
what is wrong with me that is not working for me, or something like that.
Mhm.
And so I think that it's just so important to remember, like, even the people behind giant social media accounts are still just literally people with like
Yeah.
their one or two people with, maybe they do have degrees and stuff in this stuff, but that doesn't mean that just because that they have degrees in it or whatever, that they're 100% right and they know what works for your kid and for what your family.
No, I mean, you can take two people with the exact same training and experience. We see this in our work all the time, and they
Oh
handle
yeah.
situations differently, and they have differing opinions. Like, our opinions all come from, yes, it comes from training and experience and stuff, but like our personal experiences too.
Oh yeah. And we
So,
talk about this in birth all the time. Like, what's really important is taking the information, taking the studies, the research and everything, and then applying it to your intuition. Like,
mhm,
I think we talk about this all the time. Like, our intuition is something that's so far gone in our current day and age, with how much research and studies and opinions from experts we have out on social media and in
mhm,
our lives and in articles and in blogs and everything like that. So like, I think it's really important to take the research, take the studies, and then also take our intuition and try to like
mhm.
figure out what is our intuition telling us is right for our kid that we know, and we know their personality, and what can we take to apply to our intuition and make it work and stuff. So I think that that's really
Yeah,
important.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, this has been a great episode.
Yeah.
It's a long
Sorry, I
one.
ranted a lot.
That's okay. That's okay. I think it's relatable. I think, it's just a huge topic
And
right now,
something ever a
especially
lot
this
of
time.
people in our yeah, and a lot of people in our age bracket, with kids in our
Mhm.
age bracket, are just starting to think about and figure out and
Mhm.
stuff and have conversations about. So yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for
Well,
chatting with me about it.
I hope our listeners enjoy it, and
Yeah, and
let
I'd
us
love
know what
to
you
hear
think.
like conversation about what they think, if they think
Mhm.
we're wrong, if what different things that have worked for them.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear, because we're all like learning and growing and just trying to figure this out right now too. So
Yep.
anyways, keep
Yep.
momming in the middle,
All
everybody.
right. Yeah, there you go.
Bye.
All right. Bye.